Hello, everybody in World Wide Web world. And this is the chat about everything. This is three blokes talking about anything and everything. One spiritualist, one Christian, one nihilist. So that gives us a good basis for conversations. There is no meaning intended, and it's just for entertainment. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. If you do enjoy it, comment, subscribe, all that malarkey. Today's conversation, I forgot what the question is, lads. What's the question? Is depression meaningful? This is very much something from my world, with my background as a psychotherapist, in psychology and teaching and training psychology for many decades.
All right, Tim.
This is something I
How about
wanted.
answering the question instead of waffling on again?
Yeah, we can get to the question. So the question is depression meaningful? So perhaps we need to define what depression is, maybe. I mean, do
Yeah.
people understand what depression is? Um, there's many kind of like psychometric tools and assessments that medical people and other people use to determine whether somebody is depressed or not. Um, There's the PHQ-9, the patient health questionnaire, it's 9 question questionnaire, self-administered tool that gives you or points to the severity of depression based on the DSM-5 criteria. So DSM-5 is a manual where psychiatrists and medical practitioners look up the labels that we give our psychological experience, such as
So, in
depression,
a nutshell,
anxiety.
Tim,
Yeah,
if I could just intervene here,
go on
because
in.
depression is also is known as a major depressive disorder or a clinical depression, commonly a serious mental health condition that persistently affects how you feel, think, and handle daily activities. Unlike temporary blues or sadness that most people feel occasionally, depression involves a low mood that lasts for 2 weeks, for at least 2 weeks, and interferes with your ability to function at work, school, or home. Okay,
Great. So that's a great, useful
so that's so
definition
where do you
because
stand on this, Tim? Is it
kind of I'm still outlining, mate, because
no, no, you're going into one unnecessarily. So the question is,
sorry, we're not having a discussion. Shall I go now or
is it meaningful, Tim?
before I get to that? I think it is important to. So you've
We're
outlined what it
limited for
is.
time, so if we could have some sort of, we can be, you know, quite precise and quick about this. This is good.
Is it depressing you?
No, I'm just conscious of time.
Okay. So I did want to say that most of us will feel low moods at some point. And like you've just outlined, what we're talking about or what people mean when they say depression is something that's enduring and long term, more than 2 weeks from your
At
definition.
least
And
2 weeks.
something that gets in the way, yeah, it could be quite long term. And it gets in the way of you functioning. That's what people define depression as. Personally, I think, as humans, we have experiences. So we will all experience ups and downs of life and feel as if our experience is low and high, or depressed or excited or whatever. And there's this DSM, which is, categorized as the medical practitioner's guide to whether or not somebody is depressed or not. And then off the back of that guide, that DSM, and we're on number 5 now, and there's been many iterations, they will prescribe medications as well. So just off the back of a questionnaire, you may get prescribed some medication to help you with whatever you're feeling. So we're medicating feelings en masse. And it seems to me that a lot of this is to do with not wanting to feel what we feel, and try and get away from how we're feeling if we're feeling low or depressed. Um,
So,
so
do you have an answer to the question?
yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
All right. We'll start with Henry then, because I mean,
Okay, go on then.
Henry, Henry, have you got an answer to the question?
Um,
Is it meaningful depression?
I don't know if there is a right answer. I think I'd rather let Tim finish first, to be honest, so I could see where he's going with it, so I could bounce off that, if I'm being totally honest.
All right. So you're not with
Uh,
us.
well, let's start with you then, John.
Well, I don't suffer from depression. Um, in from that, it doesn't affect work. It doesn't affect. It never affects school. So I can't talk from a position of authority. I can only surmise that is well, yeah, of a feeling low. Is it important? Is it meaningful to feel low? Um, well, I think all emotions important because you can reflect on and you can improve your feelings. You can make adjustments in your life. So, so from that perspective, yes, it's like if I was to make an analogy, it'd be like driving a car and your engine warning light comes on, and you think, okay, there's something wrong here. I need to stop and have it seen to. And it might vary. It might vary from I'm not doing enough exercise, or I'm eating the wrong food, or I'm surrounded by the wrong people. So you make adjustments and then, you get back in your car and your engine light turns off and away it goes. I think depression is more like your engine light comes on and then there's the red warning light starts flashing and from that perspective, I suspect, is it meaningful? From Yeah, it is meaningful. You need to stop and address it. Whether how you address it or not, um, I think that's I think we're too quick to start giving people drugs. I think there'd be much better to sort of take the old school approach where I think if we could go back 100 years, what would happen is that people in the workplace, for example, would suffer from lack of energy and enthusiasm to work. So they would send them down to the coast where they would have these um, sort of swim baths, open air facilities, and they just need a bit of R&R. So they would send them down there, and they still do that in Germany, for example. They need a break from the treadmill, and then they come back feeling much healthier, um, and better suited to the rat race. So I think from I think that's probably where we went wrong. I think that the big pharma sort of got involved and said, "Listen, you're sending your people away for weeks on end because they can't handle the work they're doing. If you give them this drug, it'll make them happy and they'll carry on." And so the big pharma's got involved as they do in many aspects of human life, and they prescribe a pill for it. And I think we're missing the point here. The point is that people take to I think that take to alcohol and brain and happy uh, activities because of um, the crap that life that they've got. So I think that the question in itself, is it meaningful? I don't know. What's meant by is it meaningful? That's what I would put to you, Tim. What do you mean? Is it meaningful? That's how I see depression. Um, but
That's why the
meaningful
question's phrased that
is
way,
is
for
strange to
discussion.
phrase the question.
Yeah, it's phrased that way for a discussion.
Uh,
So I guess what you're raising is two good points for me. One, that there's a biological aspect to this. There's some neurological aspect to that. So yes, people do self-medicate for low moods with other things, whether that's substances like alcohol that you mentioned, or
Food,
stimulants like cocaine or whatever.
food,
Food, yeah,
exercise, sunshine.
food,
Yeah, there's lots of things that it doesn't
chocolate,
have to be.
no, exercise, etc. All changing the biochemistry of the brain that kind of like does something for us, perhaps. Maybe it releases dopamines or
Yeah.
endorphins or whatever. But I think the point that you made about the console of the car, and the red light coming on
Mm,
is a good one. And just from that point of view, I think depression is meaningful because it means that you have to give your attention to something. You don't ignore the empty gas fuel gauge when you're
yeah.
down, because otherwise your car's going to stop. You don't ignore the engine light. Well, I did once, and my car blew up. It's kind of and I think we can all say we've had low moods. I think depression is like an intensity that goes on more than a couple of weeks. But that's things like I don't know, uh, not being able to function, perhaps not wanting to get out of bed too much, not being motivated by the same things, lack of interest in your hobbies, or maybe there's changes in your appetite. Maybe you don't eat as much, maybe you eat more. There's lots of these mood disorders, and
Mm,
I'm not anti-medication because I think for some people it's really important and really useful because sometimes this depression and I know this through personal experience working with people and feeling it in my early 20s myself and late teens and having partners that have gone through it. It's really debilitating, and sometimes people do need a bit of medication to get through it. But it's definitely meaningful for me in that it's pointing to something that is not quite right. Whether or not, John, you need to do anything about that,
mm,
I don't know, because it looks like we say, well, if you get outside or you go spend a couple of weeks down by the sea and swim and all of those things, eat good food, get enough sleep, things are going to be better. But actually, I think it is a thing that is coming up on your like gauge or your console on your car to say, well, you're perhaps not thinking, doing, or being the right way here because you're not feeling joy, you're not feeling your best, you're not feeling right. And so, as an indicator, I think it's really meaningful for sure.
So when we talk about meaning in like in this sense, we're saying like it's an indicator to let us know something's wrong, rather than like it serves some sort of grander purpose in our life to like, I don't know, serve some sort of value.
Well,
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a cool question. That's what me and John have just been talking to, but now you've reminded me that actually sometimes it's something you have to go through in order to kind of like evolve as an
Mm.
individual and as a person with your life purpose, maybe.
So we could rephrase it a different way. Is depression is it a an alert to something not quite right? Where meaningful it, it for me would mean it was intrinsic to um, well, meaningful sounds like a I don't know. It sounds too positive for me. Where is depression meaningful? It would if you were to take depression out and you say, is love meaningful? And it would be like, wow, you could think of a lot of things that would bring positive to it. Um,
Why does meaning need to be positive?
Pardon?
Why does meaning need to be positive?
Well, I don't, I can't. But when you say is depression meaningful, well, I can't. It's a bit of an oxymoron. Well, it doesn't really sort of fit well with the way I think on that one. Um, it's like, is depression an early warning sign? Or, but it's not really, is it? Because depression is actually um, it's a mental condition. Yeah, and it's also sort of it's not like a low mood you have for a day or two. This is something that goes on for days and weeks. So is it mean? What's the? I think if it's not really meaningful. I don't see that as being meaningful.
As the nihilist in the conversation, I don't know how you could label anything as meaningful in this sense, John. If we're talking meaning from your point of view, I'd always assume you meant like the indication kind rather than like some grander
Well,
purpose for me needing
yeah,
to,
is
you
money
know,
meaningful? Money, well, money, for example, allows you to buy food and go on holiday. So yes, it's meaningful. Is having a partner, a girlfriend, or a partner, is it meaningful? Yeah, because you're able to share emotions with one another and talk about things. It keeps you company. It is, you know, is
but
an
meaning's just
umbrella.
about serving a
Is an
purpose.
umbrella meaningful? Yeah, it stops you from getting wet in the rain. It's and I can't imagine what depression is. What does that bring to the table? Depression.
Everything you just highlighted was like it serves a purpose in some
Yeah,
sense.
exactly. So
But
that's what I see. I understand by meaningful, um, and where I don't think that it does serve a purpose. Depression. I think there may be prior to actually getting a depression, there may be sort of signs of sadness or just not getting out of bed, not interested in things. They could be meaningful. That could be an indication that you're slipping down the road and you end up in depression. So I can see that those aspects of daily activity are meaningful, but I don't think the depression in of itself is meaningful.
So you think that the symptoms of depression
The
are
early
meaningful?
warning signs of negativity are meaningful. I think that would be meaningful. That would be for me. That would indicate that you're not on the right track. That's your dashboard lighting up, saying there's something wrong here. You need to see it. Basically, depression is the car on fire and walk. So I mean, there's absolutely nothing you can do about that. It's all set and match. It's done.
Yeah, I'd like to pick up on Henry's point about the positive, negative aspects of meaning here, because not everything meaningful is positive. So I think, if you have a low mood, it could mean well, I mean, it's a bit like I heard some people talking about manifestation this morning.
Oh, I
And
looked at that 2 days ago. It's really strange. Yeah.
and they were saying that a lot of people, when they talk about manifestation, they talk in positive terms. Nobody talks about how you negatively manifest, but we do, don't we? And I think I could probably see depression in the same way, or any negative, or what we deem to be negative, because we are the people that put meaning on anything. So if meaning is meaningful, it's because we're ascribing a meaning to it. And let's face it, as human beings, we are meaning making machines. So we ascribe meaning to positive stuff, and we ascribe meaning to we don't tend to ascribe meaning to negative stuff. But it's the same thing. We are creating something in our lives, and for me, if you end up manifesting negative situation or being in depression or low mood, it's meaning something. It's meaning that you have hit somewhere in your life that is
Well,
creating that result.
I do. I think I do. We do
Mm.
ascribe meaningful to negative things. Like if you run too much, then you might get a twinge in your knee, or your muscle might start aching, and that in of itself is an indication that you maybe you're training too hard, or you're running and your gait's not right and you're running, or you're performing the exercise in the wrong way. So, that could be a neg that it doesn't have to be positive all the time. So I push back on that one. I think that
You
there are,
see, I think it's really interesting the way you're talking about meaning because Tim's saying as if it's something we assign, as in like, we give something meaning, but you're saying, John, like meaning is something that is there because it's like it's an indication, it's telling us something, right?
yeah,
Which is
it's an
almost
early
like
warning signal to say that if you don't address this, um, then, or it's an early warning sign. And like if you were, if you were to have a drink of beer and then you feel yourself a little bit tipsy, that's meaningful. It indicates to you you're on the precipice of you can go one way or another. You can carry on drinking and get drunk, or you can stop now and you'll be all right, sort of thing. So it's an early warning signal, really, from that. And I don't think depression it sits well in that sentence as meaningful. I think it's the end effect. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
suppose, yeah. Sorry, go on, Henry.
No, go on, go on.
Well, I was going to take us somewhere in a different direction. So if you've got something to add to that point, then maybe.
Would you agree with that?
Well, well, I've sort of lost it to be honest. Sorry.
Okay. What about you, Tim? Do you agree
Lost the
with that?
thread. Well, I was going to ask a question about
Yeah, go
because
for it. But ask the question, but answer mine first before we move on.
give us your question again, then, John.
Is it an early warning signal? Rather,
Yeah, well, I've already addressed that. In my mind, it's like the lights coming up on the
yeah.
car
So it
dashboard.
is, yeah. So
Um,
how would that?
however, like, and I can actually speak to this because when I was a young man and I drove a VW van, um, the petrol gauge was pretty much always on empty, and I didn't really have enough money to fill it up all the time. So I used to push it a lot. And I used to carry a can in the back, and it was always running out. It's it taught me a lesson, really, never to let it go under into the red, because I always used to run on fumes in that particular van and in other vehicles I had when I was younger.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, now I won't ever go beyond red. So that experience was meaningful to me because in having to walk many miles, and yes, there were some advantages to that. I would meet people. I would. I remember one time running out, and
Yeah.
I was with somebody. Oh, that John. Actually, I'm not going to say who it is. I'm not going to out her, but a female friend, and we ran out of gas, and that meant we had to hop in the back and kill some time. You know what I mean? So that was meaningful and a good consequence of something that you would say was a negative thing. Oh shit, running out of petrol. But actually, some good things come from that.
Yeah.
So it's all meaningful. It depends what we ascribe or learn from that experience, is what I'm saying.
Mm.
And so sometimes for depression, I think it's something that some people have to go through. Was talking to a friend down the pub the other day, and his partner had gone through cancer twice. And he was saying, actually, you were listening to this guy talk, Henry, was in the local pub, and he was saying because he had gone through that experience, he sees life in a very, very different way. He used to see it in a very different way to what he does now because of the dark times that he'd gone through with his partner and seeing people in that cancer ward. And now he's so much more happy-go-lucky, so much more grateful, all of that stuff. So we're talking about what a medical profession would say is a serious illness, but what I would say is an experience that people go through that is meaningful because on the other side of it, it changes their life in some way. Do you get
Well,
me?
that's different though. I mean, the thing
Mm.
is, when you've got ups and downs, you've got to have your downs to appreciate your ups. And if, and then when you have your ups, you've got to have your ups to appreciate on your way down, so you can bring yourself up again. That's completely normal, and I think it's from that. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about depression. Depression that goes beyond feeling down. This is this is something that is a continuum. This is something that lasts. This is not just feeling down. This is, in some cases, feeling suicidal for weeks. This is
Yeah, yeah,
this is beyond the flashing of the. This is beyond like you're running out of fuel. This is the fuel's run out because some people. I mean, if you take who's the Ricky the Hitman Hatton, the boxer. He had a really tough life and suffered from depression all his life. And he had wanted to take his life a few times. And in the end, he did. He took his life. He was found hung in his garage, I think, or something like that. I don't know. But he did. He managed it in the end. That is where what we're talking about, really. We're talking about depression is it's the final. This is it. This is the end, really. But it's
Well, that's not necessarily true. You'd
Well,
hope
no,
it's not.
because a lot of people are sitting on the if you, there's nobody that takes their own life that are not suffering from depression. I can't, I don't believe that to be true.
okay,
But,
well, that's not true, and I can give you an example. Okay,
but
so in some cultures, it is not seen as a negative thing.
oh,
Um,
okay. What we're talking,
Unaliving yourself. Because, for instance, in some cultures, if I'm not mistaken, somebody might correct me, but I believe that in Maori culture, for instance, in it may be seen as being called to the other side, or you might not understand this as a
yeah, I know,
man.
I
Hang
understand
on,
what,
let me finish the point.
Mm.
But they are being called by their ancestors because they've got a job to do in the spirit world. So therefore, they leave this physical realm and go to the beyond.
Mm.
And in that point, in that case, and in that point, it's not seen as a negative thing. I understand what you're saying.
That's
It
the
goes beyond
exception, not the rule,
sadness.
I would have thought. Certainly in
Sorry.
Western, that would be the exception, not the rule in Western society.
Well, that's what I'm pointing out. We're
Yeah, yeah.
making rules from a
But we're,
Western point of view.
yeah, but I would agree with you. But if we were to look at the Western, the Western philosophy on this, I mean, there is flatulence as well. I mean, where monks whip themselves and stuff like that. That's the exception, not the rule. We're talking about everyday people, and they're not doing it for religious purposes or anything like that. You know, if you will look at if you look at people's the suicide rate, and I would imagine that there's been sort of some um, precursors to that. People that are not happy, they're drinking a lot. They may have opened up to one or two people about how difficult they're finding in life. They're not getting a partner. There's this, that, and there's, you know, I think that the early warning signs will have flashed up before. The fact that they've gone then and taken their life, that means that the early warning signs weren't um, heeded, and nothing was done. Nothing productive was done about them, but about that, and they've ended up slipping into
Oh
severe
dear.
depression, and in the
What's
end,
happened here?
yeah, they've taken their own life. So, I mean, okay, what I would say is that it's the flashing of your lights, you're running out of fuel. They're the early warning signs. They're your early warning signs. If suicide is like number three, Depression's like 2 3/4. You are gonna go there eventually if nothing's ever done about it. So whether it's, and that's why I say, to say, is depression meaningful? I would say, well, no, not really. I would say the early warning flashing lights are meaningful, but the fact that they've got to depression in the first place would indicate to me it's like this is an emergency, not meaningful. This is an emergency, and we need to deal with it from that perspective.
You're right. And wouldn't you say that having gone through that, if you don't unalive yourself and take your life through suicide, but you get through that,
Yeah,
could it become meaningful in your life going forward?
I know. I wouldn't. That's exactly where I feel stuck with. I don't think that depression is meaningful. I think it's the wrong word.
Okay, yeah, we might be talking about semantics here, but I think obviously it
I
has
think it's
profound
important.
effects.
It's not the
And
same. I don't think so. But it's not semantics. Semantics being the same word but phrased in a different way. I don't think it is. It's not the same.
well, you said you're using the wrong word, so I presumed you had a different word for something that made sense in your head.
Yeah. But yeah, if I was to change the word from meaningful to say meaningful is the early warning flashing on the dash. Um, the depression really is the boots on fire, you know.
Okay. And after you've put the fire out and the car is functional once again and on its journey going along quite
Yeah, yeah.
smoothly and happy and providing, a purpose, could it then be that that fire was meaningful in some way, i.e., to prevent it happening again?
I, I suppose you could look back on the fire and say, listen, I need to take more attention to the early warning signs, those meaningful. I need to look at my dash a bit more because
Yeah,
otherwise we'll end up with that.
yeah.
Um, I don't think that in itself is meaningful, but it puts the emphasis more on the early warning signs rather than the end effect.
Mm. I
Yeah.
still think we're talking about two different kinds of meaning. The meaning that is like, well, this means this because it's come from this. We live in a world of cause and effect, and if this happens, then something has happened that leads to that. Like you could say that's meaning, right? But then
Yeah,
we've also got this meaning that we all, as humans, we assign to things because we want to think this life is worth something and that things are
mm,
meaningful. So we assign meaning to this. Oh,
mm,
he likes me, so this means I'm loved. Whatever it might be. So like, and I think we should assign meaning to things whenever we can. And
mm,
depression is obviously like a huge thing that is going to have a massive effect on anyone's life. So
yeah,
why wouldn't you try and assign meaning to that and make it mean something positive? Because anyone can make anything mean anything if they really want to. We're
yeah.
constantly telling ourselves things, and we can make ourselves mean whatever we want in a sense, And
Well,
if you want to
what I'm
make
pushing
your
back on, Henry, is
depression,
this: is really is that when somebody says like depression is meaningful, it would indicate that that it's open to everybody to explore, and I don't think you can. Not everybody can do that because not everybody can suffer from it. Because it is, it's like, is cut my finger off meaningful? Well, it'd be like, well, yeah, some people might say, yeah, that's meaningful, because and other people, well, I tell you what, I'll cut it off and find out what the meaning is. Then it's like, well, really, but when you've got a mental health issue, um, how can it be? It's only I don't think it's meaningful.
but I
Because
think you can make things meaningful, can't you?
but it
You
shouldn't
know,
it's
you can
meaningful.
look back on and say, well, okay, this has happened to me, and I'm gonna turn it into this for myself. I've cut my finger off, and rather than saying, for the rest of my life, oh well, I'm a four-fingered idiot, you can you can turn that into something, help people with four fingers. I don't know. You can make anything meaningful if you
Yeah, but
want to,
that's the end effect of it, isn't it? Really, that's what you're going to do thereafter. but I don't really see that cutting your finger off is meaningful. You know,
But it's
Sure.
that's
but
the result of that's the result of some, that's the end result. You know.
Yeah, I'm not sure I see the cutting of the finger thing, and I think well, talking to suicide and depression, I think it's still 1 in 6 adults, in Western world, in any 1 week is suffering some form of depression,
Yeah.
and it's still one of the biggest killers amongst guys of our age that there is. But I think what the important thing is that because it's characterized by a persistent sadness, low mood, or loss of interest in stuff for weeks or months,
Mm.
that is us assigning meaning or a lack of meaning
Mm.
to stuff.
Mm.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
suppose, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, from the outside looking in, for the observer, it could be meaningful, but for the person it's happening to, I don't think so much. Only once they come out and look back and see that, I suppose, then they can perhaps talk amongst other people and say, well, listen, this.
Yes.
If you feel that, these are the early warning signs, these are the symptoms, then this is the result. I see that that could be meaningful, um, but um, as a progressive step uh, to observe your own feelings, I don't think it's meaningful. But
Well, what you've
as a teacher or a therapist, I think it's important to look at that because that does bring meaning to how you treat the condition.
yeah, I mean, what you've outlined there does suggest that it does have meaning,
Mm.
To the
because
teacher or the therapist, not
um,
to the person so much as unless once they've been there and come back, then they can recognize the early warning signals so they're not to go. But it's not a
it's that.
meaningful thing for everybody to get involved in. It's very selective, isn't it?
Doesn't that just highlight that it's there to be tapped into if they want to be though? Like it's you're saying it's like you can't decide what they're going to perceive or not perceive. The fact that someone could means they could, right? And someone might not, but it doesn't mean it's not there to be perceived if they want to take
Yeah.
that route in their mind, you know? It's
Yeah. And you're also saying or inferring that it's only got meaning for the teacher or the therapist helping somebody in that dark mood. However, when somebody comes along and through experience, I know that most people will say, I don't see the point or life is shit. They're
Mm,
always ascribing some kind of meaning or lack of purpose or something, and
mm.
they need to find that in some way. So I think it can be a meaningful experience because it's like a dark night, and through getting through that dark night, they find more meaning or purpose on the other side of that. So for that reason, it can be a meaningful experience.
Providing you come out the other side and you see the positive aspects.
Most people do, unless they unalive themselves.
Well, stats will show that a large portion of men don't and end up taking their own lives. But anyway, I hear what you're saying.
A
Do
vast
you know? Do you know how
proportion.
many of the we know a percentage of people, men that take their lives at an early age. I think what's it? So 18 to 25 is, and then it's 45 to 55, and then it's about 75
I don't
to
know
85,
if we're
isn't
going
it?
to do stats. Should we look them up?
Yeah. But what I would say, what I'd ask in those is that do we know how many attempted suicides have come out and what are the stats of attempted and recovered?
Right. Yeah, probably not because they won't be included in the stats, will they?
Yes, that's the important thing. But that would be a meaningful stat. That would be able to sort of indicate how meaningful it is to get there. If
Yeah.
depression ultimately ends up in suicide, then it's only really good for the therapist or the teacher. But if
I
the
don't see that as an accurate representation at
No,
all.
No, nor do I.
But if a small percentage come out the other side, can look back and then yeah, I agree. Then I can see that there could be meaning for that. But if they don't, if people that suffer that take like, their own lives, and the people that uh, the therapy that stopped them from doing it has reversed that, then there's good meaning behind that, I think.
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but talk therapy and therapy is only one part of the treatment for
Or drugs, whatever it may be, I don't know.
yeah, it could be drugs, could be pharmaceuticals, could be diet, could be exercise, could
Yeah.
be
Sunshine.
community, could be sunshine. Yeah, could be whatever. There's a myriad of stuff. So I
Yeah.
don't know whether we would get to that, but
But
um,
what I think that's the input that you see that's the data that's missing. That's really important. That's meaningful for me. Is it's all very well to say, oh, well, this is terrible. 10% of 18 to 25s commit suicide. And you think, fucking hell, that's amazing. But if you were to say, having said that, if you have 30% of 18 to 25s that felt severe depression and suicidal, but we made an intervention here and prevented 9 out of 10 blokes from doing it. You'd think, well, that's interesting. That's the interesting thing,
okay,
not the other aspect.
let me ask you a question then, John. If you had that data available to you,
Mm,
who would, and you're able to see all of that stuff and answer those questions,
mm.
who is it, i.e., you, who would assign the meaning to that?
Pardon? What was the question? Who is it that I
Yeah.
would assign the meaning
Who
to?
assigns the meaning to understanding that data?
I'm a bit stumped on that question. I don't really
I'll answer that. I think it's always us, isn't it? Because we always decide our own meaning for anything. So like me and you could go through the exact same day today, John, and at the end of it, I could say, "Oh well, my experience is this," and you would say yours is this, and it means totally different things to both of us. And the
understand.
same way, we could read that same data. Like I think for me, that's what's being highlighted is that we all find meaning in different ways. So there's to
Yeah.
like say this is the meaning from this is like that's our meaning almost, it's totally subjective.
Yeah.
Well, unless there's an intervention, unless there's CBT or there's chemicals, if yeah, but that's why they do, um, that's
It,
why they do these big tests where you've got people per sleep, placebos, people that don't have any drugs and people that do, double blind and all this kind of stuff. So that's how to determine whether a drug is or useful or not.
but
Or
from my point of view, we've been kind of like, I don't know, giving the wrong interventions for the wrong reasons all along, really. And that depression is meaningful in that it means that it's an indicator of how you are being, how you are thinking, how you
Mm,
are behaving, how you are living.
mm,
Because that's what's got you there, really. But it is
mm.
a notable trend, apparently, suicide. I've looked up some of the rates. Most at-risk age groups in the UK are men between 50 and 54. They have the highest suicide rates. It's a silent called a silent crisis in men, probably because of expectations like manning up and
Yeah, I think that's right. I think
talking
it's
about
the
it.
early 20s, then it's the mid 50s, and then it's the 70s to the 80s, and then it's yeah. And I think the thought process behind that is there's a lot of 18 to 25 year olds don't feel that they can live up to their expectations or what society sees you as being expectations, what Andrew Tate might bring, come on, have a go at you for, man up, get down the gym, get big and strong, earn loads of money. And if you're not, if you're sitting at home and you're not getting that, then I'd imagine that suicide is probably on the radar. 55 to 45 is that when you come to the end of you feel as if that you're no longer wanted in society. Your usefulness is imminently going to expire. So then you're looking to sort of retirement, and a lot of guys can't really face that, because
Globally, this is astonishing. Globally, male suicide accounts for 75% of global deaths.
yeah, and then you get to
That's
like
nuts.
75 to 85, and I think a lot of fellas in that time don't really want to end up in a care home. And when
Mm.
their faculties start dropping off, then it's like, well, I'm not going to end up a dribbling wreck with my daughter changing my nappy. It's like I'm going to go out in a dignified way. I'll just go for a
Sure.
drive, and that'll be the end of that'll be it. So I
Yeah.
think those are the contributing factors in it. And it,
And
I got a
men
question for you,
make up,
Tim.
sorry, men make up 75% of suicides in the UK as well. That's astonishing. Go
yeah.
on.
Wow. Yeah. You mentioned about people with depression commonly showing like lack of meaning, I think you said. Could you also say that you get there through assigning too much meaning to something? So like
Mm.
say, I don't know, they don't align with their parents' values or something or
Yeah.
something like that. Could you be applying too much meaning and that is causing you depression the same way you could
Yeah.
lack of?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely, because of expectations or values that are not being lived or not being um, expressed. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
So this is what I was saying. But the 18 to 25s is that there's a weight on young men's shoulders to go out there and be the breadwinner and have the Ferrari on the drive or whatever it is. And when
Mm.
it's not feasible, then a lot of men, and they're not getting a girlfriend, they're not getting the material things. They're thinking they're failing in life, and then that inadvertently, this pressure that we put on the younger folk is driving them towards suicidal thoughts. The early that and that's that you see I see that these the likes of Andrew Chase, that they're meaningful. He's actually pointing out to the rest of us is that what's lacking in or areas of concern in younger people, and it needs to be addressed. I don't appreciate the way he goes about it. I don't think it's the right way. Um, but he does open up to the areas of where, as the Western as society, it's not just the West, the East does it the same. Is that we're putting too much pressure on young men, you know, to ascribe to our ideals, and it's like it's a load of bollocks, really.
Even that highlights how we assign meaning differently, doesn't it? Because for certain men, they're going to get in the gym and they're going to do all these things, and then for other men, it's just going to highlight all their inadequacies and
Yeah,
give them this massive weight that they can't deal with. So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
again just shows how we assign meaning totally differently, you know?
yeah,
Yeah. It's a constant, but and it applies to positive and negative. But depression is the result of it, in my opinion. It's one step before taking the ultimate decision, which is, and I don't think from depression is from that perspective. I don't think it's meaningful. I just think that
Let's be clear though that not all depressions end up in the, as you call
Yeah,
it.
but we don't know
Um,
what the stats are, so we can't say that the majority of it is caught and intervened, and therapy and drugs have stopped it from happening because we don't know those.
The reason why we don't know that is because the
It's not.
reason is that it's a silent killer amongst men, is the lack of going forward for help or talking about it or seeking like medication or trying to make a
There's
change.
no data out there. It's not counted. That's why we
No,
can't.
it's not just the data, John. It's about men's pride
Yeah,
not being able to talk to even their
yeah,
best
but
friend about it.
it is the data because you're actually making my point is that we don't have the data how men are feeling because we don't disclose that information. So it's lack of data. If
Yeah, no,
we're,
I take your point about lack of data,
yeah,
but I'm not saying it's the lack of data that means that we can't do anything about
I'm
it.
not saying that. I'm saying that we can't say. What I'm saying is that we don't know what percentage of people are saved because we don't have the data. That's what I'm saying.
No.
So,
And also because we've just got a DSM-5 attributed collection of symptoms that points to a particular mental or mood disorder,
yeah,
i.e., depression,
yeah,
if it doesn't fit into that,
yeah,
then we haven't got data presenting, even if
exactly.
they were presenting.
The only data that we do have is what's counted. Yeah. And if you don't fit into that category, it's not counted.
And also, what's lacking from even when it is counted is whether it's like life events such as stressful experiences like bereavement or
Yeah.
relationship breakdowns or losing a job, whether it's health conditions like chronic pain or long-term physical health issues,
Yeah.
whether it's personal factors about genetics, personal traits, living in isolation, all of that stuff. And
But what's really interesting is that you're absolutely right. And on that same topic, I had a thought the other day. I had a business meeting, and I got to know this person first off, and he was like, "Yeah, I still go to four concerts a year, blah 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 blah." Anyway, I determined from him he's a bit of a rocker. He liked Pink Floyd, he liked Zeppelin, and all this kind of stuff. And then I watched a documentary about a punk guy who had a terrible life. And the start of the documentary, he's running along playing his guitar as he was running. He was a complete health addict, and he was just completely. And I thought, is there a correlation between the music that you like and your psyche? I mean, are people that like thrash metal and punk, did they have a disturbed upbringing? And the people that sit there and listen to, um, I don't know, Tamla Motown, were they more chilled out, had a like nice harmonious sort of upbringing? I think there must be a correlation there. I need to go down there, examine that through AI. I think there's a correlation. I think if you've got a propensity to punk, hardcore metal, thrash metal, I think that perhaps you may have had a bit of a disturbed upbringing.
I think we need an episode on this because I've got a lot to say on this.
maybe we add it to the pot for future questions then.
The thing is, but that would indicate that I think that's it's really an intrigue. Doesn't that intrigue you? So you could really, by meeting somebody, you'll say, "What are your top five favorite bands?" And you go, "Oh fuck me, he's lost. He is. Don't get involved with that person. It's the Sex Pistols. And I don't know. It's just well, I mean, if you look at them, you look at the people that were that heavy, the Sex Pistols, Ozzy Osbourne. I mean, they were complete mental disorder. All of them have got severe disorders. Well, perhaps all
Ooh,
of them is
I
perhaps
know
not
it sounds
right.
very judgmental to me because
Yeah, perhaps not, I don't want to
these
use
are
that
people
broad,
that
but
are,
it'd be intriguing. I would propose that there is a correlation, and I need to go down that route because I think that it can be quite revealing. And I think aside of when meeting somebody the first time, I think that could be a super one question you could ask them, and you can sort of like weigh up where you want to go with things. I think I've done it unconsciously with a lot of people. It's like, where do you like to go on holiday? What music do you like? And things like that. I think that's for me unconsciously. I'm sort of filtering out what sort of person they are and what they're not, and sort of thing. And I think it's quite intriguing.
and
It's
how's
all
that
very
working out for
meaningful
you?
information.
Pardon?
How's that working out for you, John?
Um, I mean, it's a recent phenomena. I think it's a self-developed filter thing. It's something that I've in sales and marketing and talking to people, I've come to realize that I've unconsciously feel analyzing people just by simple questions. And
Something to do with meaning, isn't it? Is that what you just said, Henry?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
What did you say?
Just that it all sounds very meaningful. But I think it's starting to sound like John GPT's in the works, to be honest.
I should be what?
Psychoanalyzing people through.
I should be what, Henry?
I said it sounds like it's John GPT in the works.
That's
Do you know,
resonant.
one thing we haven't addressed, sorry, going back to the question, right,
John GPT.
is
This is into your second week now, perhaps your third week. It's resonating with you, isn't it?
no, it scarred me, bruv, not resonated.
It traumatized me as well. But let's bring it back to the question. Go ahead, Henry.
So one thing you addressed briefly at the beginning that we haven't really delved into, obviously we talked about the two kinds of meaning. If we're talking meaning in the sense of an indicator, you went down to say about the medicine briefly and how, the treatments for things like depression, they can just switch everything off emotionally, rather than not just, you've got all these negative things going on, rather than just blocking that out, it blocks out everything, right? So then it's almost like your indicators, that dashboard is like turned off. There's no lights, there's nothing going on anymore. And I mean, with this conversation talking about meaning, I think that's a huge problem, right? Because it's like you're unable to identify anything anymore. Like our feelings are there to serve a purpose, right? To let us know what's going on. Like you said, it's an indicator that something's not quite right. So if you just turn that all off, you're not fixing the root problem. You're just putting a bandage on it, right? It's a
Well, yeah. Well,
flaw.
if I could say something, you're absolutely right there. And if I could bring an example in, is that a lot of military personnel suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. And then they're assigned a drug to deal with them, which effectively flattens them, and it doesn't deal with the issue. It makes them a bit of a zombie, basically. And so a lot of them don't bother with it because of the it just cuts all the senses off. But what they've found, and recently as well, in the United States, is that they've recognized that hallucinogens are quite therapeutic, have shown to be therapeutic. And people that are hooked on these antidepressant tablets um, have the success rate is in its 90s. They've come off by taking hallucinogens, and the effects of the hallucinogen is that it's a transgression, and they go back, and it's not always what's happened in the field and shooting of people, but in some cases it is. In some people, certainly the special air service and the SEALs, is that they've shut off all their feelings anyway before actually getting into shoot, before going into combat, because they've had such a traumatic period in their life.
Mhm.
And they're not susceptible to like squeamish to bullets. I mean, because they've seen so much in their life already. Invariably they haven't got an extended family, and they've had they were always involved with the police. That sort of background that they've had, it's quite common among special forces people, is that they're a bit of a wild child anyway, and that's invariably come from their upbringing. So when they do this, take the hallucinogen, it goes back to when they were children, and they face it and they have to deal with it, and then it may be two or three times that they do this therapy, but once they've addressed the issues, they've come out the other side, and they don't need to take the drugs anymore. They fit into society a lot better. And like I say, Trump passed it, and it's the success rate on specific drugs that are allocated to these military personnel. The success is in the 90s, and it's remarkable, really. And I think you're right. You know, the drugs that they're given to depression just kills every aspect of feeling. It does, where I think we need to be a bit more. Um, I think hallucinogens are going to be the way forward for that. I think it addresses a lot. You don't have to be, have post-traumatic stress disorder. You don't have to have that. I think a lot of us, if you listen to a lot of people that are experts on this, is that we've all got problems from our past, some more than others. There's very, very, very few people that have had a perfect upbringing. We're all susceptible to what's happened in our upbringing. So I think even if you've got post-traumatic stress disorder, even like the likes of you and I, it could be therapeutic to have a bit of a bit of therapy from taking hallucinogens, and then just sort of chills you a little bit more out, makes you a bit more of a calmer, relaxed person. I think there's
Mm.
definitely mileage there to be had.
Mm. I'm not disputing what you're saying. I think there's something interesting though. Like, whenever are we talking about magic mushrooms, for example, something like
And
this?
DMTs, magic mushrooms, yeah, all sorts of, yeah.
Acid,
Yes, it generally ayahuasca,
right?
peyote is the ones that they've studied are natural
Right.
hallucinogens. I don't know if they've studied. I mean, the guy that invented LSD was a psychotherapist, wasn't he? We found it by I don't know. You'd have to
Schultz,
learn from that.
Alexandra Schultz.
Yeah, there you
Mm.
go. Yeah, and he saw it as a therapy rather than a recreational drug.
Sure.
Or was that MDMA, Alexandra Schultz? I don't know. It's been a while since I've been in
That's used for PTSD, isn't it?
Well,
what MDMA.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
but well, yeah, because I think that's also got ha- can be. It's got hallucinogen sort of properties, hasn't it? It
Mm.
can be. It depends how much is MDMA and how
Yeah,
much.
yeah, it can do.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think that the MDMA was used as an alternative to antipsychotic drugs.
it was used originally. If I've got my history right, I think it was synthesized by the Nazis, but then it was taken by the Americans and used as a marital guidance supplement to help couples kind of re-relate to each other. I
Really?
think the trouble with this conversation is that, of course, the pharmaceutical industry funds a lot of research,
Mm,
and so does a lot of the medical industry. So our efficacy for talk therapies and antidepressant drugs are well researched. And I think what you said about antidepressant drugs shutting off feelings, I
mm,
think that is actually useful for some people. For instance, last year, when somebody close to me was very depressed, it was weeks and months of not getting out of bed and crying all the time. Now, that is useful to shut off for a period because that in itself is very exhausting and very difficult to deal with,
mm.
in order to help somebody get out of bed and start making changes. So we should be careful that we're kind of like not advocating for complete alternatives rather than some of the useful things that might be okay in some cases for some people. Personally, I'm not
Sure.
very pro drugs, but I think the executive order that you were talking about as well with Trump, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is to do with one particular hallucinogen, and that's ibogaine, which is a
No, no,
synthesized,
it's a peptide. No, no, that's something different.
right? I thought that's what they released recently.
No, it's the compound within magic mushrooms, psilocybin, I think it is.
Psilocybin. Mm.
What they've released that, have they?
Yeah, he's approved. Well, Joe Rogan said to him, he said, "Listen, this DMT and psilocybin have shown to be really effective for.
It's both actually. So I've just had a look. It's psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in something like magic mushrooms. You're right, but it's also ibogaine, which is a synthesized version of the iboga plant, which is an African roots plant, which is used for uh, ayahuascan type ceremonies.
Ah,
Interesting plant actually,
yeah.
because apparently that is like going through a ceremony like that, they give to early adolescents, in particular, villages and tribes in Congo and places like that. And it's said to be worthy of about 17, 18 years of talk therapy in
Mm,
terms of what you're shown
mm.
from your past, and childhood and early incidents that have shaped you.
No,
So
but I agree
interesting
with
stuff.
you. I mean, where there's no therapy, hallucinogen therapy there, and people are struggling with depression, you can't tell it. I mean, the early warning signs have been ignored, and now they've slipped in depression. Now, getting them out of there, it's it's an uphill struggle. Really, I think you're right. I think that in where you've got severe cases where people have slipped into depression severely, um, I think perhaps having an antipsychotic drug um, to sort of numb your feelings is perhaps the only thing that we've got, you know, and that it's rightly or wrongly, yeah, we need to address that in this country. I think in America, like I say, with psilocybin, they're looking at alternative methods, but in this country, we don't have anything like that. It's just this is the way it is. These are the drugs we've got. This is a recommendation, like it or lump it. And if you take it, you sit there and you're like, and the next, or you don't do that, you're like,
Yeah.
It's like,
It's
wow.
Yeah,
interesting.
John, you just said about it being like an uphill battle, right? And this might be totally flawed thinking, but let me know what you guys think. Like it, when we have problems in our life, we sometimes think it needs this whole process. Sometimes it's as simple as like a change of mind, an insight, something like this. Could this be the same for depression? That it could be literally in an instant that someone could be cured or free from their depression or whatever. Is that possible?
Yes,
Not in
I
an
believe
instant.
so.
I don't think you can do it in an instant. But I think that, like I said earlier, we've all got our battle wounds growing up, some more severe than others. Um, I think I think it's. If my daughter said to me, I'm interested in learning a bit about more sort of, hallucinogens, I'd say, yeah, great. Find a nice, safe place to go for it and go and do it, if that's what you want to do. But avoid booze, avoid cigarettes, avoid alcohol, marijuana, nice. Psychedelics, nice. I think they're all positive stuff, but the rest, what's available in society is pretty crap. What's what they've pushed under, what they've made illegal is invariably pretty good, with the exception of the likes of speed and cocaine and meth and fat. And then it goes back to what you were saying before, Tim, about the Germans inventing. I think that was methamphetamine. But anyway.
I mean, that's a very subjective list going on there, John.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think certainly we followed the Americans, and the Americans outlawed marijuana, and because a lot of uh, the brown skinned people of American, that's what they like to do to enjoy themselves and relax, and so rather than and it was a way of it was a racist thing to do, and that's what they did. We followed suit as well.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the Misuse of Drugs Act, wasn't it? 1973. I think they started it in 1970,
yeah,
the war against drugs. What's actually occurring is that, people will self-medicate and they will experiment and they will find things that are useful, or they may become addicted to things that are not useful.
yeah, and
I
invariably they're pushed into pills, which big pharma make billions out of, and they don't actually deal with the problem, they just hide it.
Yeah.
So it's recurring revenue,
I
which
was
they
just
like
about
as a business.
I was just about to say, quite often it's jumped upon on Big Pharma, and yes, it was the Germans synthesized a lot of compounds in the Second World War because they were looking for ways of controlling, ways of
But it wasn't MDMA, was it?
yeah, no, I think that was one of the drugs that they synthesized. If I'm not correct, not right, whatever I'm saying, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, this executive order that Trump has signed
Yeah.
apparently is called Accelerating Medical Treatments for Serious Mental Illnesses, which is designed to fast track and the research and regulatory review of psychedelic drugs like psilocybin and ibogaine. But what that will do is push it into the domain of big pharma again. And to answer your question, Henry, yes, I personally believe it is possible to find recovery from depression, anxiety in an instant through an insight that points out, oh, I'm not suffering from depression. I'm having depressive thoughts.
Yeah.
Or
Mm.
I'm not suffering from anxiety. I am having anxious thoughts. And in recognizing that and addressing that, and yes, John, we've all traumatized from the past in some shape or form. And you talked about the military and the fact that, A, they're alpha men, so they're not likely to go for treatment as much as other people. But secondly, the elites have had such a training to train fear and things out of themselves and feelings out of themselves because they have to. Then they start from a very different starting point. And personally, I think neurodiversity in the elite military comes into it. In fact, I know so because I've done a little bit of work
Mm.
talking to those guys. And so, therefore, they have got more propensity for things than neurotypical normal people. But it's all a very complicated, kind of like nuanced conversation we're having here.
But what's interesting though, is that three times as many people die of suicide. Soldiers, American soldiers, three times as many American soldiers die of suicide than they do in combat.
That's
Uh,
shocking, isn't it?
and we are one fifth of that. And then when I went down the rabbit hole, was why? It's because we do short tours in war zones, and we are rather than we have close knit groups of people that go out there. Where the Americans they do perhaps a 1 year or 2 year tours, and they're amongst multiple, much bigger groups of people. And then when we come back, although it's not a recognised, servicemen are just kicked out into society, but we have a national health service there and other support networks for our military. And in America, it's just not. Unless you've got money, then there's no medical help. So it, yeah, it's. But going back to MDMA, it wasn't invented by the Nazis, but it was invented by the Germans back in 1912, and it was originally developed to stop abnormal bleeding. Yeah, so there you go.
They invented that right before the First World War.
Yeah, 1912.
That was
Mm.
in the First World War, wasn't it?
When did it finish?
14 to 18, I thought, is it not? I'm
Yeah,
not very good at this kind of
I
shit.
think you're right. Yeah, yeah. So it wasn't really used for the military, from what I understand.
No, but then it was taken to California and used as a marital guidance supplement.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's like um, yeah. We use drugs, repurpose drugs for other conditions. That's quite common. We do that quite. Ivermectin is another one. They try to, it was invented by a Japanese man who got Nobel Peace Prize for it, and it was an anti-parasitic drug. And people used it in COVID, didn't they? But it was, but they didn't like the idea of that because the big pharma had a nice vaccine for you that cost hundreds of pounds, where ivermectin cost pennies. So that was no good. We didn't want people. They didn't want people having taking ivermectin to address the issue because there was no money in it. Big pharma wanted you to have their nice expensive vaccine. So there you go.
So Anton Kalish was in 1912 to bypass a competitor's patent, and Alexander Shulgin, I got his name slightly wrong, in 1976. He was the American chemist who rediscovered and synthesized MDMA to popularize it in the 70s for therapeutic use.
Yeah,
Um, I'm going to
and it
put
worked.
myself on mute because I've got somebody at the door here.
On your calendar,
Okay.
yoga starts in 30 minutes.
Hmm. But anyway, next stop. Where are we? We're 12:30. We're almost like an hour and a half into this. Are we? Do you want to wrap things up, Tim? Because I know that you've got pressing appointments today.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks very much for the discussion today. I think depression is meaningful on many levels, personally.
Hmm.
And yeah, let us know what you think in the comments below. See you again for another
What about
podcast.
you, Henry? What's your takeaway from this?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is meaningful. I think we didn't quite nail down what meaning is. I think it's a very hard thing to nail down, but I think it
Hmm.
means something in the sense it tells you something about your life, what's going on, your situation, etc. But I think also you could make it meaningful on the other side of it, as we can with anything, and you could turn it into a positive. You could also make it seem much worse than it is. I don't, we can make meaning out of anything, but I think certainly it is meaningful. I think you should always try and make things meaningful when you can, because we have the choice to do that. And yeah, I think it's been a good combo. What about you, John?
I've enjoyed the conversation. We've explored lots of areas. As for the question, I think it's just phrased in a terminology that doesn't sit well with me. But that's just, it could be semantics. I don't know. But I've enjoyed the conversation. It's been, am I changed any? No, I don't think so. Um, then that's that. But yeah. Thanks, guys. Another great conversation. Time's swiftly gone by. Must have been having fun.
Thanks, everybody. See you again.
Yeah.
Yeah.